Like the wind I came and like the wind I left. This phrase perfectly describes the 13th century hegemon, the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire was the largest empire in history, conquering much of the Eurasian continent with astonishing speed. At its peak, the empire stretched from the Sea of Japan in the east to the Mediterranean Sea and the Carpathian Mountains in the west. Today, large countries like China, Russia, and India, as well as most of the Middle East and even parts of Eastern Europe, were once part of the Mongol Empire or its vassal states, deeply influenced by this crazy chapter of history. But being able to conquer the world does not mean being able to rule it. Soon afterward, due to internal conflicts among the upper echelons, the colossal Mongol Empire began to disintegrate, forming the Yuan Dynasty and the four major khanates. Although the rulers of the four khanates all descended from Genghis Khan's golden family, and nominally recognized the Yuan Dynasty as their suzerain, in reality, they were independent states, often in conflict with each other. Then in 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang, who had pacified the south, marched north, founding the Yuan capital, Beijing. The last emperor of the Yuan dynasty, Emperor Shun, had to flee in haste, marking the end of the Yuan dynasty. This year was just 162 years after Genghis Khan established the Mongol Empire, and less than 100 years after Kublai Khan founded the Yuan dynasty. The tide receded, leaving only the Mongols in the Mongolian heartland, preserving their pure Mongolian bloodline. They were gradually influenced by Tibetan Buddhism and faded into the secular world. So the question arises, what was the relationship between the Mongol Empire and the Yuan dynasty? Was Genghis Khan a hero or a murderous tyrant? How did he rise to power, unify the Mongol tribes, and then conquer the world? Were Genghis Khan's descendants also formidable warriors? What was Kublai Khan's entry into China about? Where did the Mongol army's incredible fighting power come from? Where did the three Western expeditions reach? And why did the once mighty Mongol Empire suddenly decline and fade into the secular world? Today's overview will address these questions in a self-questioning and answering format to clarify some basic points about the Mongol Empire. First, is the Mongol Empire equivalent to the Yuan dynasty? No, the Mongol Empire, also known as the Great Mongol Nation, began in 1206. It was in this year, after 20 years of war, that the grassland warrior Temujin was elected as the leader of all Mongol tribes, becoming the legendary Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan and his descendants were known as the Golden Family. As for the end date, in a narrow sense, the Mongol Empire ended in 1259 or 1260. Between 1206 and 1259, the empire was a unified whole. The Great Split began in 1259 with the death of the Khan. Afterward, Khan's two brothers, Kublai and Ariq Böke, fought a war for supreme power that lasted 4 years, ending with Kublai's victory. After the war, the Mongol Empire quickly disintegrated, forming the suzerain Yuan dynasty and the four major khanates by 1279. In a broader sense, the Mongol Empire included these entities. The four major khanates were the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ilkhanate, and the Yuan dynasty. Second, scholars often say that the internal strife of the Golden family led to the eventual decline of the Mongol Empire. So what caused this internal strife? Unlike the Chinese dynasty's primogeniture system, the Mongol Empire's succession system was quite chaotic. All sons of the Khan had a chance to claim the throne, leading to constant power struggles. The death of Khan Gayuk was a major turning point. Now, let's straighten out the lineage of the Golden family. Genghis Khan and his primary wife Böke had 4 sons, all of whom were legitimate. From oldest to youngest, they were Joki, Chagatai, Ogedai, and Talyui. First, let's exclude the eldest son, Joki. Early on, Temujin and his wife Böke were newlyweds when the leader of the neighboring Merkit tribe, seeking revenge for Temujin's father Yasugei's abduction of his wife, raided Temujin's camp and abducted Böke. Several months later, Temujin rescued Böke, but soon discovered she was pregnant. Later, Böke gave birth to a son, Joki. This was awkward to say the least. Was he really Temujin's child? Although Temujin, later Genghis Khan, always loved and respected Böke, and showed fatherly love to Joki, this questionable bloodline remained a shadow over his heart. The name Joki, which means guest in the Altaic language, reflects this ambiguity. Genghis Khan was always distant from Joki and would never make him his heir. Additionally, unlike the Chinese, Mongols had a tradition of the youngest son managing the household. Genghis Khan favored his youngest son, Talyui, who stayed by his side and inherited all his property. Even Genghis Khan's death notice was issued by Talyui. Although Talyui acted as regent for several years, he never became the supreme ruler of the Mongol Empire. The Mongol throne eventually passed to Genghis Khan's third son Ogedai because in Genghis Khan's eyes, Ogedai was the most like him, with a tall stature, robust physique, broad forehead, small narrow eyes and a large face. After Ogedai's death, the throne passed to his eldest son Gayuk. However, Gayuk's death marked a significant turning point, shifting the throne from Ogedai's line to Talyui's line. Talyui's line held the throne until the end of the Yuan Dynasty, and his descendants were considered the true Golden Family. The new Khan, Talyui's eldest son Monk, divided the khanates to suppress Ogedai's line. The two major factions within the empire thus became clear. Talyui's and Joki's descendants formed one alliance, while Ogedai's and Shagatai's descendants formed another. However, even within Talyui's line, unity was not guaranteed. Brothers had to settle accounts among themselves. After Monk's unexpected death during the siege of Huchuan, his position was taken by his brother Kublai. Monk and Kublai's brother Ariq Böke also declared himself Khan, leading to a power struggle between the two. Kublai's faction aimed to establish long-term rule in the rich eastern lands, with a strategic focus on China. Ariq Böke's faction, on the other hand, advocated a return to the grasslands, with the traditional Mongol capital of Karakorum remaining their spiritual center. Kublai ultimately won, but the empire's strength was significantly weakened by this civil war. During the 39 years of the Middle Yuan period, there were 9 emperors, each with an average reign of just over 4 years. The path to the throne was bloody and difficult, and once enthroned, the position was precarious. This instability was largely due to the Mongols' unclear succession system. In short, after the throne passed from Ogedai's line to Talyui's line, conflict arose between Kublai and Ariq Böke within Talyui's line. The constant internal strife at the top was detrimental to the empire's development. Third, among the early Mongol Khans, from Genghis Khan to Kublai, who lived the longest and who the shortest, and how did they die? In 1227, Genghis Khan died, possibly from injuries sustained in a fall from his horse during his campaign against the Xixia. He died at the foot of the Lupan Mountains, in what is now Gansu Province, China, at the age of 65. As for Ogedai, historical records generally portray him as a mediocre ruler, known for his love of alcohol and indulgence, leading to poor governance. A story illustrates this. The wise minister Yeluchu Kai, seeing Ogedai's excessive drinking, showed him an iron wine vessel corroded by alcohol, saying, "Your Majesty, even iron cannot withstand the corrosion of alcohol. How can the human body made of flesh and blood endure it?" Ogedai was shocked but continued to drink heavily. In 1241, Ogedai went hunting in the Altai Mountains with several hundred retainers, drinking heavily every night for 5 days. A few days later, he was found dead in his tent, his body already cold. Ogedai was 55 years old at the time, which was not considered short-lived in those days and given the Mongols' primitive lifestyle. Ogedai's son Gayuk met an even more tragic end. In 1248, Khan Gayuk planned to attack Joki's son Batu, who had distinguished himself during the Second Western Expedition but was also known for his disobedience. Gayuk gathered an army of 100,000 and set out from Karakorum toward Batu's territory in the Kipchak steppe. However, Gayuk suddenly died under mysterious circumstances. He was only 42 years old and had been Khan for just over a year. There are many theories about Gayuk's death. Some say he was assassinated by Batu's agents, others say he was poisoned, and the Yuan history claims he died from excessive drinking, like his father. In any case, Gayuk was not a prominent Khan, but his death marked a significant historical turning point, as the throne passed from Ogedai's line to Talyui's line. After years of planning, Talyui's eldest son Monk finally ascended the throne. Monk is generally regarded as one of the few capable leaders of the Golden Family. He once told an envoy from Europe, "My power and Batu's, the two kings of the West, are like the reach of one's gaze, extending in all directions." During Monk's reign, although he sent Hulagu on the Third Western Expedition, the Mongol Empire gradually shifted its focus to China. Besides sending Kublai to attack the southern Song dynasty, Mongke personally led the Western army to attack the Sichuan region, advancing from Shaanxi and Gansu provinces in China, through the Jianghe ancient road into Sichuan, aiming to form a pincer movement with Kublai's army and surround the southern Song dynasty strategically. Mongke's Western army was the key to this offensive, but unexpectedly, the Mongol army, known for its invincibility, encountered unexpected resistance at Hezhou, a military stronghold and the northern gateway to Chongqing. In the following months, the Mongol and Song armies fought dozens of battles at Hezhou, but the Mongols could not break through the city's defenses. The battle remained deadlocked until June, when the hot and humid weather became unbearable for the Mongols, who were accustomed to cool and dry climates. The Mongol army became increasingly irritable. Meanwhile, the Song army continued to provoke them, one day throwing a package from the walls of Hezhou. The Mongols opened it to find 2 33-pound fresh fish and over 100 flatbreads. The message was clear. The city had ample supplies and could withstand a prolonged siege. The Mongols were shocked and demoralized. Mongke, anxious to boost his army's morale, climbed a high platform to observe the city. However, he was spotted by the Song army, who aimed their catapults at him and destroyed the platform. Mongke was thrown dozens of meters and severely injured, dying shortly afterward. He was only 50 years old. The fifth Mongol Khan and the founder of the Yuan Dynasty, Kublai, is more familiar to us. Kublai was the longest-lived of the early Mongol Khans, dying of natural causes at nearly 80 years old, an impressive age for that era. Fourth, when did the 3 Mongol Western expeditions occur, and how far did they reach? The Mongols were known to Westerners as the Yellow Peril, or Scourge of God, implying that these primitive and barbaric tribes were sent by God to punish civilized societies. The Mongol armies during the Western expeditions were indeed terrifying, known for their ruthless sacking of cities, striking fear into the hearts of all who heard of them. There were 3 Mongol Western expeditions which we will discuss in turn. The first Western expedition, also known as Genghis Khan's Western expedition, occurred between 1219 and 1224. It began when, in 1218, Genghis Khan sent an envoy with a caravan of 450 merchants, 500 camels, and countless silk, gold, and tea to Central Asia. The caravan was attacked and the envoy killed by the Khwarezm Empire, a powerful state in Central Asia at its peak, encompassing present-day Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. This act enraged Genghis Khan and sparked the first Western expedition. Not only did the Mongols avenge the blood feud by conquering Khwarezm, but they also subjugated Iran, Afghanistan, and parts of Russia, even reaching India. This expedition was a great success for the Mongols, laying the foundation for the second and third expeditions. For the people of Central Asia and Europe, however, the process was extremely brutal. Many cities were sacked, such as the famous city of Samarkand, where all the residents were massacred. In some cities, only a few people were spared to serve as artisans or soldiers. These soldiers, known as arrow fodder, were often the first to charge in battles, facing almost certain death. Despite the brutality, the Mongol Western expeditions opened up previously closed trade routes, deepening cultural and economic exchanges between East and West. Through these expeditions, Genghis Khan and the Golden Family introduced China's 4 great inventions to the West and brought Western culture to the East. The second Western expedition occurred during Ogedai's reign, from 1236 to 1241. It was also known as the Expedition of the Princes, led by the eldest sons of the various branches of the Golden Family. Although Batu was not Joki's eldest son, his ability and prestige made him the commander-in-chief of the expedition, with other eldest sons, such as Ogedai's son Gayuk and Talyui's son Mongke, also participating. This expedition reached as far as the Russian principalities, and even into Eastern Europe, including Hungary and Poland. Like the first expedition, it was marked by swift and brutal conquests. The Mongol army seemed poised to invade Western Europe, but Ogedai's death from alcohol poisoning put an end to their advance. Some have speculated that if not for Ogedai's drinking, the Mongols might have reached Italy, Germany, France, and the rest of Western Europe, possibly altering the course of history. Western Europe thus escaped a potential Mongol invasion. The third Western expedition occurred during Mongke's reign, and was smaller in scale than the first 2. As mentioned earlier, by this time the Mongols' focus had shifted to China. Additionally, although the route of this expedition was similar to the first, it was much easier because most of the regions had already submitted to the Mongols. The main target of this expedition was the Nizari Ismaili state, a feared terrorist state at the time. The Mongols quickly defeated the Nizaris. This expedition also reached the Middle East, conquering the Arab Empire in Syria. The once glorious Abbasid Caliphate fell to the Mongols in 1258. The reasons behind the Mongol army's formidable fighting power and the details of the 4 major khanates will be explored in future videos. This entire Mongol Empire series will cover important figures who have appeared in today's video. It may seem complex, but if we clarify the lineage of the Golden Family, it becomes much clearer. Genghis Khan, Ogdi, Gayuk, Monk, and Kublai form a straightforward line of succession. If you still find it confusing, don't worry. Just getting the general idea is good enough. The history of the Mongol Empire is not just Chinese history but world history. It is a grand and tragic tale, full of drama and conflict. Stay tuned for more updates and we'll see you next time.